Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Cook. I'm the founder and CEO of Shiny Shoe. We're the creators of Monster Train. Glad to have you here today. Today on stream, we're going to do something a bit different from what we've done the last few times. Rather than just jump straight into a run and start playing and see what happens and kind of explain it as I go, I'm going to slow things down. And this is going to be kind of a tutorial for newer players to the game, where we're going to do a deep dive to really explain all of the different mechanics that are going on in Monster Train, all the unique things about the game, and kind of really give like a detailed how to play. So thank you for joining me, and let's get started. So first of all, okay, here's the main menu. What is Monster Train? Okay, it is a deck building roguelite card strategy game. Let's unpack what that means. Let's do roguelite. A lot of people know what this means, but basically it means the game structure is like a run. You know, you play in what we call runs. When you start, you're starting as a fresh kind of game every single time you play. And then within around an hour-ish, you're going to reach a conclusion. You're either going to win or you're going to lose. It's a deck builder. It's a card game. That means you start with some deck of cards, depending on some starting conditions we'll look at later, and then you add and remove things to it. That's where the strategy comes in. It's both what you do in battles in the game, which we'll see, as well as how you modify and improve your deck. But with that out of the way, like, what are you trying to do? All right, why is the game called Monster Train? You're on a train packed with monsters. You are playing as the forces of hell. Hell is under attack from the Gilded Wing, a rogue faction of heaven who is trying to freeze over hell and destroy it. So you are trying to bring something called the Pyre Crystal. It's the last source of hellfire. It's on your train, and you are trying to move it through the 9 rings of hell. It starts on Limbo, and you're trying to get to the Frozen Heart to replace it in the center of hell, which will restore the flames of hell broadly, unfreeze all of the kind of damage that's been done to hell by the Gilded Wing, and that's how you win a run. So, all right, with that kind of like high-level description of what the game's about, we're going to go to something called the logbook before we go into a run, and we're going to look at cards. Because by looking at cards, I'm going to be able to explain a lot of different things about how different parts of the game works. All right, so here's the logbook. Okay, let's open it up. All right, so I'm going to filter based on a clan just to make sure I don't show something that we haven't yet revealed. So the way that the game works is there are 5 clans of hell that you can play. And when you start a run, you choose 2 of them. One of them is your primary clan, and another one is your allied clan. And your clan affects both what types of cards you can see within a run, as well as what the starting conditions are, amongst other things, but that's the high level. So yeah, let's look at the Hellhorn. It's one of the 2 clans that's in the public beta that you can play now. If you don't have the public beta yet, you can go to themonstertrain.com and sign up. It's currently scheduled to end on April 9th, 2020, so there's still time if you're seeing this in time. All right, so we're looking at these cards. Let's look at the Hornbreaker Prince first. The Hornbreaker Prince is the champion of the Hellhorn clan. Every clan has a champion, and a champion is a special unit. He's always in your deck. The champion is always the first card you draw at the start of every battle during your run. And it has a bunch of specialized upgrades that are unique to that champion. So the Hornbreaker Prince, in the logbook you can't see what those upgrades are, and we'll see how that works a bit later. But the Hornbreaker Prince, he's the champion for the Hellhorn clan, so there's only 1 champion per clan. There's 1 champion card. All right, so if we look at his card in more detail, we can start to see like some of the elements that make up a unit card. So a champion is a type of unit. All units have an attack. So the Hornbreaker Prince has 3 attack as his base attack damage. All units have health. The Hornbreaker Prince has 3 health as its base health value. All cards have an ember cost. So the ember cost is up here on the upper left. It's 0 for the Hornbreaker Prince. So Ember is our mana resource. Essentially, it's like the flames of hell. It's your Ember. So he costs no Ember to cast into your train, and we'll see how that works in the future. Other cards cost more than 0. And there's one last kind of resource that we'll see in more detail, but it's here at the top of the card. These 2 yellow pips. These represent the capacity that the unit is going to take up within the train. How much space. And different units are bigger and smaller, and that's another cost to playing the unit. And it affects the strategy, because there's different rooms in your train, as you'll see later, and you can only summon so many units into a single room before there's no more space left. And so often stronger units take up more capacity slots than weaker ones, but there's different ways to change that through gameplay and modify the capacity cost and so on. All right, so that's our champion. Let's look at some other cards that we have just even on this page. Let's pick one that's going to be relatively easy to understand. Okay, let's look at Rage Serum. Rage Serum is a spell. So spell cards, unlike unit cards, they can be cast sometimes multiple times per battle, and they are usually targeted either onto a single unit, like you're going to buff up a unit with this, or you're going to do a direct damage onto somebody, for example, directly damage an enemy. But looking at Rage Serum specifically, it's got 2 properties. Well, first, let's look at its Ember cost. It's also Ember 0. In fact, everything on this page is either X or 0. So we'll see some cards in just a minute that have higher Ember costs. So it doesn't cost any Ember to cast. And then it's got some keywords down here. It's got the Consume keyword. Consume means it can only be played once per battle. So once you cast this card, it will leave your deck temporarily during the battle and go into something called the Consume pile. There's ways to bring cards back from the Consume pile, but we don't need to get into that right now. And then its main function is it applies Rage 3. What is Rage? Rage is one of the mechanics of the Hellhorn clan. It makes the monsters angry when you cast it on them, and it gives them additional damage. So the tooltips that you can see there, we try to make tooltips everywhere in the game to explain everything if you need the extra information. It gives you +2 damage per stack of Rage. So this gives Rage 3. So on the first turn you cast this, you'll get 6 extra damage. But Rage decreases after every turn. So on turn 1, if I played the Hornbreaker Prince and I cast Rage on him, he would have a base attack of 3. This would add Rage 3. Which would add 6 more attack. So we'd have 9 attack. All right. Now we've got a couple of other little guys here, these imps. That's one of the kind of like monster factions of the Hellhorn. And you can see the subtype of any creature is kind of written between the numbers for the attack and the health. So these are imps. And subtypes sometimes matter. That's more advanced, but just know that every card, every unit has a subtype. All spells will just say spell at the bottom. So the Pyre Chomper, this big chungus right here, when you cast him, he gives you 5 Ember. So he has a trigger. It's called Summon. So Summon triggers when played. So when you play this card and you summon him into the train, you will instantly gain 5 Ember, which can be handy for casting other cards. How many subtypes, we got a question, are in the game? Well, actually I don't know. There's at least a handful per clan. So I'd guess something like 15 to 20, but don't quote me on it. All right, so Pyre Chomper is an example of another unit. So it takes up space in the train. Its capacity is just 1. It has a special effect when you summon it. Otherwise, it's very weak. 1 attack, 1 damage. All right, let's see what else. Let's go a few pages forward. So now we've got some cards that are starting to cost Ember. So clearly we're sorting based on Ember here in the logbook. Let's look at Fortify. So Fortify is a spell. It costs 1 Ember to cast, and it applies Armor 5. So armor is kind of like an overheal, so to speak. It's something that you can cast on units, and it gives them additional defenses on top of their health. So this gives you 5 points of armor, which will prevent you from taking damage to your health. So if you take 5 damage, it'll first remove it from armor before it removes it from your health. So it's a handy utility card, defensive card. Let's look at the Horned Warrior. This is a unit that does nothing special, so he just has some pretty good stats. He's got 20 attack as his base attack value, only 4 health, so a bit like weak. You don't want to use this as a frontline defender, which you'll see what that means more once we look at what how battles work within the train. But pretty strong attacker, also takes 2 capacity. This one costs 1 ember to summon into the train. All right, so, and his subtype is Demon. So just as an example that there are different subtypes, and there's gameplay mechanics that will come into play based on what subtype of the unit, either that are in your deck or that are summoned into the train, and so on and so forth. All right. Let's just briefly look at Torch. This is a spell. Simple one. It's a direct target spell, cost 1 ember, deal 2 damage. You can target enemies with it. You can target your own units with it, which there are reasons to do that sometimes. That sometimes surprises people. So there, yes, we are intentionally allowing you to use spells like Torch to target your own units, because there can be combos, especially in a more advanced play, where that is useful. All right, let's see if there's anything else that's interesting. Okay, let's look at this guy, because this is more of a crazier outlier. So the Consumer of Crowns is another demon unit. It costs 9 ember. So by default, when you start a run, you only get 3 ember per turn. So 9 ember, how do you even cast this guy? It's crazy. He takes up 4 capacity slots, so that's the highest we've seen yet. However, he's got this special ability here. Cost -3 ember per imp unit in play. So this is how subtypes can come into play. So if I had summoned a couple of those smaller imp guys over here, like Pyre Chomper or his friend Molting Imp here, and they were sitting in my train, for each one of those imps that was still alive when it was my turn to potentially cast Consumer of Crowns, he would cost 3 ember less. So if I had those 2 imps in my train, I would be able to cast Consumer of Crowns for just 3 ember, which you might have enough to do. And he's got some crazy stats. So he's got 100 base attack, which is huge, and 40 base health, which is also quite large. Yeah, but the downside is he can be hard to cast sometimes. All right. Let's look at another clan, just to see a smattering of different types of cards and events. So let's look at the Awoken. The Awoken is the other clan that's in the public beta. The next 3 clans after that are not in the public beta and are going to be in the full game. But let's look at the Awoken. So the champion for the Awoken is the Sentient. All champions cost 0 ember, so they're always a free cast that you can place in your train on turn 1 of every battle. The Sentient starts with no base attack and 10 health. So triple and a little bit more of the health in comparison to the Hornbreaker Prince, however, 0 attack. Also 2 capacity. Now, you wouldn't be able to see this here, and we'll look at how champions get upgraded in just a little bit, but just so that you have a sense of like the different themes of the clan, I can tell you like what the Sentient upgrades are all about. They're more defensive in nature, and kind of reactive to what the enemies do. So one of the things that the Sentient can be upgraded with is spikes. And spikes are a status effect that can be placed on the Sentient, or on any unit, such that when an enemy attacks them, the amount of spikes is returned as damage back to the enemy. Speaking of, let's look at a spikes card. Pyre Shards. Also has Consume. By default, unless you can find a way to work around this, you can only cast this card once per battle. And it applies Spikes 4. So you could put Spikes on any unit you want, including your champion, which might already have Spikes from some other function, from some other upgrade, and really stack it up. And when you do that, you'd want to put the unit with a bunch of Spikes, ideally, in the front of the line of units, which we'll see how that works in combat. So that when the enemies attack, they're first hitting your frontline defender, which is ideally somebody with a lot of health, and they're dealing damage to them, and they're taking damage back from spikes. So spikes is one of the kind of gameplay themes of the Awoken clan. Just like Rage was kind of a gameplay theme of the Hellhorn clan. Every clan has multiple themes and multiple kind of like strategies that you can mix and match to win. And I think one of the coolest things about Monster Train is that you can combine any two clans in the game when you start a run. So it's 20 unique permutations of primary clan and allied clan. And there's all sorts of different gameplay mechanics to try to mix together when you're trying to build an interesting deck to approach the run and try to defeat the final boss. All right. Let's just look at a handful of other cards and mechanics in the Awoken clan. All right, let's look at the Animus of Speed unit, which is of subtype Animus. So you're going to see here the attack looks different. It says 3 times 3. That means this unit attacks 3 times. In fact, that's what the multi-strike keyword means. It says multi-strike too because by default, it would attack for 3 damage. 1 stack of multi-strike means that it would attack 3 damage twice, and 2 stacks of multi-strike means it would be attacking for 3 damage 3 times. I mean, dealing more damage is always good, right? But multi-strike has the interesting property that if you kill an enemy, if you defeat them with 1 attack of multi-strike, you may be able to hit another enemy that's standing behind them with another hit of multi-strike. If this unit just did 100 damage, like the Consumer of Crowns we saw previously, if the first enemy that it was attacking had 1 life, it would be kind of wasted. It would deal 100 damage to that enemy, and then it would be dead. And that would be the end of the combat, basically. But with multi-strike, the Animus of Speed could hit that 1 hit point enemy for 3, kill it, and then be able to hit again for an enemy behind it. So strategically, multi-strike is interesting and a bit different than just like big damage. All right. Regen is another one of the kind of mechanical themes of the Awoken clan. So let's look at Wildwood Sap. Again, it's a potion-y type of card, so it has Consume on it, which I won't explain again. And it applies Regen 5. Regen restores 1 health per stack at the end of every turn, and it decreases every turn. So this can be like a good thing if you're going like Spikes and Regen have a synergy. Like let's imagine our Sentient is like our strong Spikes unit. We're piling Spikes onto the Sentient. It's like a frontline blocker in our trades, blocking enemies from attacking us. And we pile up Regen on it. It means even though we expect the Sentient to take a bunch of damage on every turn, after the turn's over, it can regenerate its health, which can be very beneficial. All right. There's also a good deal of card draw in the Awoken clan. So let's look at Focus Growth and Healing. Healing is just broadly another one of the themes of this clan. So restore 10 health, draw 1. It's a spell, costs 1 ember. So it will restore 10 life that's been damaged on a unit and draw a card, which can be handy to see something else that comes in your deck in addition to the healing properties. All right, is there anything else I want to cover here? Let's see. Here, I'll mention this card. This is something that it's going to be a little hard to see without knowing how the train works, but let's look at Restoring Retreat briefly. This is a spell, costs 2 ember, descend a unit and restore 10 health. So what does descend mean? Well, you'll see what the train looks like when we go into a battle, but basically it's kind of this crazy vertical, humongous, big chonkin train that has multiple floors. And units can move up and down between the floors. And the rules governing that is basically you can summon one of your units into one of those floors, but to move them in between those floors requires additional spells or other ways to make that happen. So Restoring Retreat is one such spell that can move your units or enemy units in between floors in the train. And I'll show you more what that means in just a little bit. Okay. I think that's like a pretty good high-level overview of the types of cards that you'll see and kind of some of the mechanics, like not everything, but some of the mechanics that exist in the Awoken and the Hellhorn clan. There's a few other types of cards that I'll briefly show. Let's show this one. So this is Deadweight. This is a Blight card. That's its subtype. And it has no ember cost, no capacity, no attack, no nothing. And this card is unplayable and unpurgeable. This is a card that you usually don't want to have in your deck. It can't be removed at all. It can't be upgraded. Like, you can't do anything with this card. There are some ways where that can be beneficial to you, but it's I'm showing it because it's amongst a class of cards called Blights that are all kind of bad. There's one other one called Scourge. Let's see if I can remember one of the names. I'm being careful for what I search here because I don't want to accidentally show too many things that we're still keeping a secret. Penance, I think, is one of the words. Let's see if that's right. Yep, there we go. Okay, the Ultimate Penance. So this is a Scourge card. Blight cards come from decisions that you make as a player primarily. However, Scourge cards are created by enemies. So there are certain types of enemies that can create these like negative cards that you don't want to have. They only last for the current battle that you're in. And so what does the Ultimate Penance do? It costs 1 Ember, so you can cast this one. And it's got 2 keywords on here. It's got Purge. Once it's played, it's completely removed from your deck permanently. So that's good. I mean, you're not going to, once you see what it does next, you're not going to want to keep this thing. And it has the Reserve keyword. And Reserve is a trigger. It triggers if the card remains in your hand at the end of turn. And if it does, then your Pyre takes 5 damage. So, you know, you definitely don't want to keep this card in your hand of cards, if at all possible, because your Pyre, which is that crystal I mentioned a while back, that's kind of like the thing you're trying to protect. If you lose all your Pyre's health, you lose the run. That's what you're trying to bring into the center of hell. Yeah, you don't want to take damage on it. So if you keep this card in your hand, you're going to take damage at the end of turn. So it's kind of almost like a tax. It's like if you pay the tax of paying 1 Ember, you get rid of this thing. But if you keep it, then you have to take that damage. And you still keep the card, so you could draw it again later, potentially. Okay. Let's leave the logbook now and start a run. So I can explain some of the things that I alluded to that I hope will make more sense. All right, I'm going to turn on music too, because I muted that earlier. All right, there we go. Okay, let me turn that down just a little bit to make sure that, all right, it doesn't overwhelm. Okay, so at the start of every run, amongst other decisions, you choose which 2 clans that you want to play. So I have the Hellhorned as my primary clan pre-selected, and the Awoken as my secondary clan. I've cheated to level them up to the maximum and everything. We're not going to be looking at the other 3 clans today, but this is where you can mix and match between all 20 permutations of clan combos that I mentioned earlier. So let's get on the train, and let's depart and start our run. I'm actually going to skip this, but without going into too much detail, but I'll just say, like, at the start of every run, we tell you which final boss you're going to face. And this is not something you need to be super concerned about as a brand new player, but as you start to gain more experience with the game, it can help you craft. It's like a piece of information to help you strategically craft your deck during the run to make sure that you can counter the specific mechanics of the final boss that you're going to face. Now, there's no guarantee you're actually going to reach the final boss. You could die before getting there, but it's something that we think it's interesting to kind of plant that seed in the player's mind at the beginning to make sure that, you know, you're doing the right things to try to figure out what strategy would be most ideal to defeat the final boss. Okay. There's the Bone Shaker. That's the name of the player's train. And we're in Limbo. It's the first ring of hell. And just to show you kind of like where the player goes, you can scroll down here. You can scroll down through hell. We're going to the center of hell through all these different sections. And here's the Frozen Heart. So I'm showing this because this is your goal in the game. The goal of your run is to proceed through the depths of hell and get down to the bottom and restore the pyre into the Frozen Heart, which will reignite the flames throughout all of hell and essentially win the run. All right, somebody asked, how many different forms of Seraph? Seraph is the name of the final boss. He's the leader of the Gilded Wing. How many versions are there? Currently, there are 3 that have completely separate, unique mechanics that like significantly affect how you want to build your deck on the run. All right, so scrolling back up to the top where our train is, before even going into the first battle, we have some decisions to make here. Let's go to the Dark Forge. Remember before I said your champions can be uniquely upgraded. the Dark Forge is the location on the map where you do that. This is Hef, the blacksmith, and she helps you power up your champion. So there are a variety of upgrade paths for each champion. And at each Dark Forge, you only see 2 of them, however, and that's kind of the fun of these roguelite type games, is that there is a ton of variety, a ton of interlocking game mechanics, but it feels like it's always changing because the decisions are always changing because there's so much randomization. All right, so I've got 2 options on this run. For the Hornbreaker Prince, I can choose either the Brawler upgrade, which gives him multi-strike. I explained that one before. So now he deals 3 damage twice and gives him Rage 5 when he's summoned. So that's going to mean an extra 10 attack on the first turn you're summoned, the Hornbreaker Prince is summoned. Or I can go for the Reaper upgrade path, which greatly enhances his initial damage to 15 and an extra 3 health. And it has a trigger called Slay, which we haven't seen before. Slay triggers after dealing a killing blow. All triggers have their explanation in the tooltips on the side. And we get plus 10 attack. That's what that sword symbol is. It matches the symbol, the attack value for this card. So if you're able to get a kill, 1 kill, now you've got 25 attack. Another kill, now you've got 35 attack, and so on. So, I don't know. Which one do I like here? Let's try... Let's go with Brawler. Let's give it a shot. The other decision, one of them that you get to make before you go into the first battle, is Herzl's Horde. And you can gain an artifact here. We haven't talked about artifacts at all. Artifacts are passive benefits that stay with you for the course of the entire run. There's a huge number of them. There's some that are specific to certain clans, so they'll only show up if you're playing those clans, and some are shared amongst all clans. So let's take a look at what's on offer. You can choose between 2 from Herzl's Horde. And design-wise, that's really like, philosophically, we want to pack this game with as many interesting decisions for the player as we possibly can. So every time you get to anything like this, you're never just given something. It's not like just like, okay, here's what you got. You always get a decision because we want you to be making interesting decisions nonstop. Okay, this time we have 2 options. One is Concussive Coals. 50% chance to apply Dazed when an enemy unit enters your train. What is Dazed? A unit with Dazed skips its next attack. That's pretty good. It means, yeah, enemies that kind of come into the train may not be able to attack for that turn, which means we can punch them or attack them without taking any damage back, which could be good with the champion upgrade that we chose. Or our other option is Hell's Banners. When you summon the second unit during a turn, gain 3 Ember. So this is a Ember Accelerator. It can help you cast more cards per turn than you might otherwise be able to. But for fun, I'm going to take Concussive Coals because I think it might combo well with that champion upgrade we took. So just as an example, I'm going to take that. It flies up here. This is your inventory of artifacts. You can always hover over them to see what they do if you forgot. And all right. Let's look at a battle. All right, well, I reset my save data recently in tutorials. There's actually many more tutorials in the game that I've skipped, but this is a tutorial that I wanted to talk about anyways. This is the battle intro screen. It points out kind of who you're going to be facing. So these are the enemies here that we're seeing. It gives some information, like the name of the battle is the first defense. There's some information that's kind of like, it's a half flavor text and half kind of hint as to what types of actions the enemies are going to be taking. And before every battle, after you've played the game just a little bit, you have the ability to take a trial. A trial is an optional increase in difficulty that results in an additional reward. So in this case, the trial option is the Mark of Invasion. At the start of battle, enemy units appear on each floor. And I get an extra 75 coins. Coins are a resource in the game as well that's used for purchasing things from merchants and a variety of other kind of more advanced subjects we won't get into. And I can turn that on or off. I think for purposes of this kind of tutorial session, we're going to leave it off. But it's important to note that trials benefit you if you're able to overcome the additional challenge, which we think is a cool kind of like optional thing to decide if you want to opt into or not. Because if you can take out the trial with minimal loss of resources on the player side, those benefits can be really meaningful to building a great deck and winning the run. All right. Okay, we finally made it. We've made it into a battle. We've drawn our hand of cards. There's a lot of user interface on this screen. Let's go over what's going on here. So, this is your train. It's got multiple floors. Before I talk about anything else, let's go up and down. These enemies just entered. Enemies always enter at the bottom floor of your train. This is like the engine, the bone shaker, the engine of your train. And they're trying to climb up to this floor, which is called the pyre room. Inside the pyre room is the pyre crystal, the last shard of the pyre. This is what you're trying to protect. It's represented up here in the user interface. It's got 60 health to start with. If we lose all of those 60 points of health on the pyre, the run's over, we've lost, we've died, we haven't been able to restore health. So this is what we're trying to protect. So how do enemies get up there and fight with our pyre? Well, after every turn, if I clicked end turn right now, these enemies, who would have taken no damage in that context, will climb up to the next level. When I hit end turn, they climb up to the next level again, and so on. And so eventually, they're able to reach the pyre room and attack your pyre, dealing damage to it. Now the pyre isn't helpless though. It's got 20 attack, and it's got something called sweep, which means it attacks all units, all enemies in the room at the same time, which is great. So that's good. However, this is really important to the core gameplay, enemies attack first, which we won't see because this guy's dazed in this particular turn. Anywho, let's look at what we can do with our cards. Like I mentioned before, Ember, which is right here, that's how much Ember I have right now, is kind of our mana resource. So I've got 5 cards in my hand and 3 Ember. 4 of those cards cost 1 Ember to cast, so that means I cannot cast all of my cards this turn. But I think I'm okay with that, because we're going to see how I make some strategic decisions. This is my draw pile. It's where my cards are drawn from. You can look at that if you want. This is my discard pile. There's nothing in my discard pile because we haven't played a turn yet. If you want to see your entire deck, there's a button you can click on up here that shows you more. All right. Okay. Well, let's summon a unit into our train. I'm going to summon my champion first. And I'm just going to summon him into the first floor. All right, we're going to ignore what that said just for a sec. Okay, so my champion is here. He's got 13 times 2 damage because he has multi-strike. We upgraded with him with that earlier. He's got 3 health. This icon indicates his rage. He's got 5 rage right now, giving him plus 10 attack. This little meter right here indicates the capacity in the room. Floor capacity. Units can only be summoned on a floor if there's enough space. Hornbreaker Prince takes 2 capacity that we talked about earlier. So we only have 3 more capacity slots in this room before we can no longer summon anybody into this room. And these other 2 rooms where we can summon our units they're empty, so they've got empty and like all the capacity slots are open. As a quick aside, it's important to note you cannot summon units into the pyre room. So the pyre and its engine is consuming all the space in there, so you can't put any of your units in there. All right. Now, our Hornbreaker Prince, he's a little bit squishy, so I'm going to summon another unit, the Train Steward in front of him, to protect him. The Train Steward has 5 attack, 8 life, took 2 more capacity slots, so now I only have 1 left, and he cost 1 Ember, so I have 1 less Ember now in my current inventory of Ember. Now, let's look at something. What are these little like dashes here and the X's here? This is a preview feature, battle combat preview we call it. It's a feature that's optional. We default it to be on. You can turn it off here with this eyeball, but what it does is it calculates behind the scenes what would happen if I pressed end turn right now. Who would take damage? Who's gonna die? And so on. So this combat preview looks fantastic for us because it's saying both enemies are going to die, and nothing, that's what this kind of dash represents, nothing is going to happen to either one of our units in terms of taking damage, which is great. Now, why is that? Why are both units going to die? Well, okay, we've got two enemies here. One is the Disciple Protector. He's got 10 armor. So you can kind of think of it as he has 15 hit points. He's got 5 base life and 10 armor on top of that. And there's also the Discipled Foot Soldier, who is dazed. Why is he dazed? He can't attack for 1 turn, which is great for us. He's dazed because our Concussive Coals artifact triggered, and we got lucky, and he got dazed. And I say it's good that he's dazed and not the Disciple Protector, because the Disciple Protector has no attack. It's got 0 attack, whereas this unit has 4 attack, damage, and 1 hit point. Okay. So still, why are they going to die? Well, let's just try to play it out in our head, just to kind of give you an idea. This is what you would have to do if the preview was turned off. Enemies attack first, like I said. However, because this unit is dazed, he won't attack, and this unit won't attack because he has 0 kind of attack points. So the first thing that's going to happen is our Train Steward is going to hit the Disciple Protector for 5 damage. So then it'll be down to 5 life and 5 armor. Then our Hornbreaker Prince, remember he attacks twice for 13 this turn. He'll hit once, so at that point this guy only has 5 armor, 5 life, 10 effective hit points left. 13 is enough to kill him. Then, because we have multi-strike, we're going to attack again. Then we'll hit the Discipled Foot Soldier and also kill that unit. And so I'm going to change the game speed. This is something that you can change. It kind of affects how fast the animations of combat play out. When you're learning the game, you should definitely play it in kind of normal speed, which is what I just set it to. So just to show combat, I'm not going to cast any of these other spells. I mean, partially because I don't need to heal, and Torch, I don't want to play because I want to show you guys how the combat plays out. So let's just hit end turn and see what happens. So it played out just like I described. And something interesting happened. So in addition to 2 new enemies entering on the bottom floor, we also have a collector who joined the battle. These are little gold treasure babies, that's what I like to call them. And if you defeat them, they have trigger. So triggers are these like kind of circle purple icons on the unit in battle. So you can always find out more information about what the icons mean by hovering over and seeing the tooltips. So it has an extinguish trigger, triggers on death, gain 50 gold coins, which I want. That also has a resolve trigger, triggers after combat, flees from the battle if not rooted or dazed. So the inspiration from these guys is actually like Golden Axe. If anybody ever played that, an old school arcade game that was later, I think, on the Genesis, where these little treasure goblins would appear and, you try to beat them up before they run away. It's kind of the same idea here. Like, we think it's kind of tries to attract your resources. Like, do I want to spend my resources to try to kill this guy to get the gold, or do I want to spend my resources on protecting my fighters or defeating enemies? So let's be greedy. I am going to just use Torch on him. I'm going to make suboptimal decisions here just to show off some different things. So I'm going to use Torch. It's a direct target spell. I've got a couple in my hand right now, so you can choose who you want to target. So I'm going to choose to target the collector. I click. He died. I got the 50 gold. Feeling happy. But now I got to consider what's going on down here. Okay, so our battle preview shows that the Forged Disciple is going to die from the damage that we're able to deal. The Disciple Foot Soldier is not going to die. And our Train Steward here is going to take 6 damage. Now, although I could torch the Discipled Foot Soldier, I'm just not going to because I want to show you what happens when the enemies climb. So I'll play another Train Steward on a different floor. Now, no, I can't play him in this floor. That's why it's showing up as red, because there's not enough capacity. The Train Steward takes 2 capacity slots. Those are those 2 yellow pips on the top, but there's only 1 free in the room. So instead, I'll summon the Train Steward, the second one, on this floor. And I'm just going to hit end turn to see how combat plays out. So we should see the Forged Disciple die, the Disciple Foot Soldier is going to live, and our Train Steward's going to take 6 damage, excuse me. And because the Disciple Foot Soldier is going to live, it's going to ascend. It's going to climb up to the next floor. All right. On every battle in Monster Train, there's a boss. And before the boss comes out, there's a brief respite. So we've got that right now. It's a kind of turn where no new enemies spawn, and you're given an opportunity to heal up, summon more units, buff up, and so on. So my Train Steward here took some damage, so I'm going to restore some health. This is another direct target spell that we can target onto whomever we want. And I cast that twice, and now I have 1 ember left. I can either summon another unit, or I could torch this Disciple Foot Soldier. If I torch him, then this Train Steward won't take any damage. If I summon another Train Steward, I might be able to heal this one next turn, so I'm actually going to summon another one here, and I'll end my turn. Okay, this is the boss. Chains of the Sighted is his name. He has something we haven't seen yet. It's called Relentless. This is a special status that only bosses have. What Relentless does is, I'll just read the tooltip. Combat in this room continues until all enemies are defeated. This unit cannot be rooted. We'll ignore what root is right now. But basically, what's going to happen is my units and the enemy units are going to keep fighting. Unlike previous times when you hit end turn, they won't climb up after 1 round of combat. There'll be as many rounds of combat as is necessary until either all of the enemies are dead, or, excuse me, until the boss is dead, or until all of my units are dead. Because if you kill the boss, then you win the battle. So the boss came in. He's dazed thanks to our artifact Concussive Coals, which is great. But he's only going to be dazed for 1 round of combat, and he has Relentless, so they're just going to keep fighting. He also has a Resolve trigger, which adds a self-mutilation card to the top of your deck. That's one of those Scourge cards that I talked about earlier. So this boss can summon Scourge cards into your deck to kind of junk it up. If we look at the battle preview right now, excuse me, it's showing both of our units are going to die. And the boss is going to take 29 damage. And the Disciple Foot Soldier will live. Now, I could do some things to probably change the status of this, but I'm going to let that happen just so that we can see it as an example. And I'm going to heal up my Train Steward up here, back up to full life. And I'm just going to end my turn. So now, they're going to keep fighting. That's the difference. So this is the 3rd round of combat now, and all my units are dead. The boss summoned that Scourge card. He put it on top of my deck, which means I drew it right away. So I've got this self-mutilation card, which has Purge and Reserve. We saw those keywords earlier, and it's highlighted in red because you really don't want to have this in your hand at the end of turn, because if I end my turn with this, I'm going to take 3 damage. All right, we got a question from Vindictive Coins. Can you make your own units relentless somehow in the game? The answer to that is no. And the reason for that is we think it would be too overpowered, basically. So there's all kinds of statuses and different things you can do on both your units and on the enemy units, but Relentless is solely a property of bosses in the game. And I don't even know how many bosses we have now. There's a huge number of different bosses in the game. In each battle, like this is Battle 1, as you're going through the Rings of Hell, there's multiple bosses in Battle 1 that do different things. But yeah, bosses are the only ones that ever get Relentless. Okay, so battle preview is showing that I'm going to defeat the boss, which is great, because if I defeat the boss, it means the battle is won. So I don't even have to do anything. I can just hit end turn and I'll win. However, if I did that, I would take 3 damage on my Pyre, which I really don't want to do. So I'm going to cast Self-Mutilation, which purges the card. It's just blown up. It's destroyed. It's gone from my deck completely. And now we won't take that damage at the end of the turn. Just for fun, I'm going to torch this enemy back here just to get rid of him. Because who likes that guy? And now I'm going to end my turn, which is going to defeat the boss. And they're gone. Okay. Victory. We've succeeded. One thing I forgot to mention that we can look at briefly is, you see this ice on this floor down here? The first floor? That means the floor is destroyed. Anytime one of those Relentless bosses ascends, they go up a floor, they completely destroy the floor that they were in. Now, why did they do that? Well, it's because they're trying to blow up your entire train. So once a floor is destroyed, you can't place any units in there. And if any units were stuck in there when the boss climbed, this is a little bit more of an advanced thing, but when the boss ascends, if there's any units like rooted in there on either side, on the player side or the enemy side, they will also be destroyed. So anybody who stays in that room gets blown up, basically. And then, yeah, like I said, the boss's goal is to climb, or all enemies' goal is to climb to the pyre room and destroy the pyre. Okay, now let's look at the victory screen. We got a few rewards here. So we got 50 coins, a clan pack for our primary clan, which is the Hellhorned, and an allied clan pack, which is an Awoken clan pack in this case. So I'm going to show you kind of like my decision-making surrounding these rewards, and then we're going to end the stream after that as kind of like a cohesive look at the types of things that you would do for the core mechanics of the game. So, okay, got my gold. Now I get to choose a card. 3 cards to choose from. Inferno is one. It's a spell that deals 100 damage to friendly and enemy units, so it attacks everybody in a room. And it has piercing, which means it ignores armor and shields, so it's like, it's going to hit your health regardless if you have any boosted armor or there's other types of shields in the game that we're not going to cover today. And it costs 4 Ember. So that's interesting, but right now I can't cast that because I don't have 4 Ember. You only get 3 Ember per turn. There's ways to change that, but we don't have that yet. Important work. I won't look at what it does, but it sacrifices an imp. We don't have any imps in our deck yet, so probably wouldn't go for that in this case, necessarily. And then Pyre Chomper, who we saw earlier, and he gains 5 Ember when you cast him, so that sounds good. I'll go with him. And we get to choose a card from our allied deck. I talked about regen before. Let's just choose Wildwood Sap, just as an example. Once you've made those decisions, the game moves forward. The next Ring of Hell unfreezes. Then you decide where you want to go. There's merchants. There's unit rewards. There's gold. There's different types of merchants. There's all kinds of stuff that goes on within the game. I'm not going to cover any of that today. I invite you to play the public beta now if you're not already and explore it. But yeah, I hope this was helpful. Thank you for joining me today. And yeah, see you guys around. Bye.